I never thought I'd be excited to make a review on a 7-inch monitor for a camera, but here we are. This is the Osee T7 3000 nit monitor. Welcome back to the channel. I hope this review helps you in making a decision into purchasing a monitor, and if it does, give it the good old thumbs up below. Now I'm going to break this video up into 3 different sections. Number 1, what makes the Osee monitor different? Number 2, why you need an external monitor. And lastly, number 3, is this monitor for you? But first, let me clear this up. A lot of monitors, when you're looking at buying them, do say that they are 4K. It generally has 4K on it somewhere, and they are not 4K. They take a 4K signal. However, the Osee monitor is 1920 by 1200 pixels, and on a 7-inch screen at this brightness, it actually looks better than 4K. It's just got to do with the size of it and the distance that you're away from it. Also, in the box, it comes with a cold shoe, quarter screw, a D-tap to lockable pole DC cable, and an AC/DC power adapter. So let's kick it off. Number 1, what makes it different? To start off, it's a 7-inch monitor that only takes one Sony-styled NPF battery. Now, a lot of monitors that are super bright actually take 2 batteries, and they also have this runtime of about 5 hours or so. And this is insanely good considering it only takes 1 battery, and you can get a good few hours out of this. Now, I haven't tested the total runtime on this if you put an NPF 970, but I use NPF 750 batteries because they are a little bit smaller, and the runtime is amazing. On a project that's about 2 to 2.5 hours long, I can easily use 1 battery, and I'm sure if you had to go with a 970, you'd get a longer runtime out of it. Now, the 1 to 2 battery thing does actually make quite a large difference, because if you can get good runtime out of 1 battery, it makes your entire system lighter if you are using actual batteries and not dummy batteries. It also has a DC input, a speaker, as well as a headphone jack. Now, a lot of monitors like this don't have speakers, and in actual fact, this is pretty cool to have a speaker, because if you are using this as a director's monitor and the director maybe has someone around him and they're not actually using headphones that are plugged into the headphone jack, everyone around them can listen to the audio, and the audio is actually pretty loud. Getting to one of the biggest differences from this monitor to anything else in the market is it is a massive 3000 nits brightness. Now, if you don't know how bright 3000 nits is, let me show you. An iPhone 10 is apparently 726 nits. A Samsung S20 Ultra is apparently 823 nits brightness with a peak brightness of 1342 nits. Now, to be completely honest, between the two, I still find the iPhone 10 a lot more viewable in the sun, and there is a certain thing when it comes to different monitors are able to be viewed better in different light. Now, these 2 mobile devices are impossible to see in sunlight, and you already know that. So putting it next to the Osee T7 3000 nit bright monitor, check this out. So in this first clip, you can see it's a little bit overcast, and what you see here is how the iPhone is a little bit better than the S20 Ultra, and then when you see the Osee T7, it is so much brighter. Now, this type of shading and weather, it does favor a mobile device or a dim phone, and now when the sun is blaring out, you can see that the Osee T7 is still perfectly viewable, and the other 2, you can't even see anything unless there's that shading, that little bit of building behind it. This is where the Osee T7 really just pulls away from everything else. Pretty insane, right? Now, as of a few months ago, the Osee T7 was the brightest monitor that you could buy at 3000 nits, and the closest competitor was 2600 nits. As of right now, there is still nothing brighter than 3000 nits that you can buy to put on your camera. Now, this is the T7. Now, the T7 does not have SDI ports. It has an HDMI in and an HDMI out. Whereas Osee does make a G7 for those that use HDMI and SDI, and that is available on their website. Also, like a lot of monitors, it has an SD card slot, so you can load your LUTs or your lookup tables into the monitor. So if you are filming in log, you can put them over and see them. If you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. I don't really have to explain that. And one of the last biggest differences is this is not touchscreen whatsoever. Now, if you're thinking to yourself, well, that's not a good thing because a lot of monitors are touchscreen. To be quite honest, Osee is onto something here. They've given you a little joystick that can be depressed, click it every single way, and they've given you an interface to work with that is actually super simple. The biggest issue with touchscreens and why I wouldn't recommend or like a touchscreen monitor is purely because of the fingerprints. As you know, with a mobile device, the more fingerprints on there, the more glare you get from the sun, and you can't see through those fingerprints, making the screen less viewable in direct sunlight. Now yes, you may assume that setting it up with touchscreen could be simpler, and I'm not going to deny that fact. This is pretty easy, but the thing is with a monitor is that once it is set up, you generally have what I'd probably refer to as pages. You'd have page 1, page 2, page 3, and so it goes. Now with the pages, you would set up your false color, your zebras, etc. on one screen, and on the second screen you'd have a different setup. As any creator or filmmaker, you'd kind of have a different set of screens, knowing which ones are go-to to get your color right, your exposure, your white balance, etc. And this is where a monitor that has no touchscreen really shines, due to the fact that once it's set up and you've just flipped through your different pages, you don't have to touch the screen. There are no fingerprints, and it's not as if every job that you're on, you're constantly playing with your monitor, because you set up these types of menus long before you get on set. Other than that, you can hook it up to your gimbal rig, your handheld rig, HDMI in, HDMI out, perhaps to something like a Hollyland transmitter, or you could even just straight to a Hollyland transmitter and give this to someone as a director's monitor with a Hollyland connected to it, like a simple setup like this. Another thing that makes this so awesome is the thin bezels at the top and the bottom. Now the thin bezels do make the screen seem a lot larger, as it gives it a wider aspect ratio and not so tall like most monitors. Something else to love about this as opposed to other monitors is the HDMI ports that are at the back. A lot of HDMI ports are at the bottom on a lot of monitors, making it a little bit tricky to get an HDMI port from the bottom into a rig, especially when you're twisting and turning it. So having them at the back is actually the best scenario for it. Now I do agree that some people may prefer it in different spots, and that's completely understandable. Now I could go on for days on a review about simple things like the on-off switch. It just makes sense. There's no holding buttons down. The auto rotate, that is insanely fast. And just the simple design where there's no extra buttons everywhere and handling it just feels good. Number 2, why you need an external monitor. Honestly, I never thought that having an external monitor would be something worthwhile. I thought it would make my GH5 and GH5S system too bulky, too clunky. It wasn't going to get me a better picture out of it, so what was the point? Clearly, I had no idea what I was talking about. Using the Osee T7 changed that completely. In actual fact, my wife even believes that this is some of the best gear that we have, because when you view it and you film in, it just changes the way you look at how you film, the way you crop an image, everything changes. I don't know why. I have filmed hundreds of jobs, and for the life of me, I cannot understand how I made it before and how I battle now if I don't have a bigger monitor. The fact that you've got 3000 nits of brightness right in front of you, it feels as if you viewing it at home already on your editing PC, and it's there. The creative ideas just start flowing because you see the shot totally different, especially when you play it back. You can see if there's too much camera shake rather than trying to look on this tiny little screen on the back of your camera. It's truly a whole new way of filming, and I cannot express enough how awesome it is to use a bigger monitor. I know, it sounds weird, but it's the truth. Number 3. Is this monitor for you? Now, if you're searching for the right monitor, there's a few things that you need to keep in mind. And this is where I have to be 100% blunt and honest about monitors and what you should look for in my experience. Number 1, the brightness. Are you filming in a studio, or do you film on location and you don't have the choice where to always stand? If you're a wedding filmmaker, or you film for a lot of brands, events outside, and you don't have control of your environment, having a super bright monitor is definitely something that you need. Number 2, the size. You get a 7-inch monitor and generally a 5.5-inch monitor. Most 5-inch monitors generally have around a 400 to 600 nit brightness. So going back to point number 1, if you do need a really bright monitor, you're probably going to have to go with a 7-inch monitor. There are some 5-inch monitors that go up to 1000 to 1500 nits, but those generally are a lot more pricey. Number 3, an internal recorder. Now this is just a monitor. When you start looking at things like the Atomos Inferno, they are internal recorders. So it takes an SSD. Now what they do is they allow you to upscale the quality that your camera records straight to an SSD, so you get larger storage at a cheaper price, number 1. Number 2, you can get 10-bit or RAW, whatever it may be. So if you are looking for that, this isn't the monitor for you. But you're probably asking yourself then, why do monitors that don't have recorders exist? Well, if you do have a GH5 or GH5S, and you are looking to upgrade sometime soon, a lot of newer cameras start recording 10-bit internally. Then it becomes pointless to go spend probably quadruple the price on a monitor that records internally when you could probably just have recorded that internally on your camera. That way a monitor like this is a lot more beneficial as you save a lot of money. So this is why monitors exist. So you have a Zcam E2 M4 or a Blackmagic Pocket Cinema 4K. Those record straight to SSDs. So then you would just buy something like this, and buying an internal recorder monitor is kind of pointless. Mounting points. This has a mounting point at the top as well as the bottom quarter screw, and it's got those two little pins for some of those mounts so they don't twist. Some monitors have mounts on all four sides, some only on the sides. So if your setup that you do not feel like changing needs side mounts, then this monitor is not for you unless you want to use some form of arm. However, I do like mounting my monitor dead center, and all my setups have compensated for using top and bottom mounts. Number 5. Finally, the price. The T7 HDMI version is only $430. Now the G7, which is the HDMI and SDI version, and does come in an Epic carry case, is $721 at the time of recording. I'll drop a link in the description below to where you can actually pick these up. You can actually pick them up from Osee direct. Overall, the Osee T7 is an amazing piece of machinery, right down to the hard shell plastic that you have on the outside. It has got an aluminium body on the inside, which makes it super sturdy, and it's one of those that don't have that creak when you try and twist it really hard. Now I could go on for days how extensive the menu is in the Osee T7, and I think if you're at the point in your career about having a monitor, you kind of know what features this would have. But let me give you a brief rundown of what's in the menu. Now you can add 8 tools to one screen, and the choice that you have on tools is quite extensive. You've got your aspect, you've got your safe area, a center marker, crosshatch, a level, false color, zebra, histogram, waveform, vector scope, focus assist, peaking, your look, which is your LUTs, audio meter, SDI metadata if you have the G7, and then you can do the image resize on the scale. One thing to point out is that on every single item that you add, as an example, your safe area, you can toggle it on and off with the push of a button. You can also change the format, you can change the action, you can change the exact aspect ratio that you want, the title, and so it goes. Each menu that you do is extremely extensive. By toggling it on and off, you can select if you want it small, middle, large, as well as the location. So as you can see, it's insanely extensive and you can do exactly what you want. But the bonus is, like I had mentioned earlier and shown, is the different pages. So this is my favorite page where I have a safe area as well as a crosshatch with my center marker, as I'd like to film with rule of thirds. And you can see I've blackened the edges just a little bit with a bit of opacity to help me focus more on focusing the subject where I want them. And then flipping through the different pages just takes the tap of a button left or right. Now we'll drop a link in the description below direct to the Osee website when you can pick it up. It's not an Amazon affiliate link. I don't get commission or get paid to do sales on it. So take my word for it, this is probably one of the best monitors that you can buy on the market. So that's it from me. Wherever you are in the world, have a good day, good evening, good night. Goodbye.